first objective this evening is to answer this question. Is the American presidency a killer job?
Yes.
We all look at, wrinkles in the faces and the gray hair, but the answer to that question is a loud no. It is not a killer job. In fact, the reverse is true. And that's evidenced by this slide, which reads as follows. The left bar is George Washington's lifespan. He lived for 67 years. He was born in 1732, died in 1799. And the bar is the age at death of all the presidents. The red line starts with Washington in 1732. The average life expectancy of an American male born in 1732 was 38 years. And that red line goes real all the way across the graph. The life expectancy of the American male didn't go past 50 until actually a few decades ago. So it took a long time to get all the effects of modern medicine into that system. Reagan was born in 1911, died at the age of 93, so that's the one on the right side there. Most presidents outlive their peers by between 10 and 20 years, so something is working in their favor. The only exception, of course, is Kennedy. Kennedy was the shortest lived president, he was only 46. There's a professor at Illinois named Olshansky, J. Olshansky. He's trying to rationalize the reasons for these kinds of effects. And his conclusion is it's due to the high socioeconomic status of the presidents. That's an alpha male if you ever see one as a president. He reinforces that. He says, orchestra conductors live longer than first violins. Academy Award winners live longer than Academy Award nominees. Nobel Prize winners live longer than Nobel Prize nominees. It goes beyond that. Alpha baboons live longer than regular baboons. So that seems to be a trend. Well, that's the answer to that one. And we're getting to the point now where 90 our standard for the course of the presidency. Jimmy Carter is almost 95 and a half now. Keeps going. Bush 1 was 94 in 6 months. Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, John Adams, Herbert Hoover. George W. Bush and Obama are on trend to reach 90. They're not there yet, of course. But George W. Bush was the only president who ever entered and won the marathon. So he's in good shape. And Barack Obama is in as a gym rat, so he'll probably make 90 as well. The day he was elected president, Obama's blood pressure was 90 over 60. So people probably live forever. And like these two guys at the end there, Harry Truman is my favorite president. Bess Truman is the longest lived member of the first family. She's almost 98 years old. And it's due, at least in part, to the fact she didn't get caught up in the pressure of politics in Washington. She spent most of her time as First Lady of Independence, playing cards with her girlfriends. So she had no causes, she never did a press conference. So she basically stayed out of the pressurized atmosphere in Washington. And my final count on this slide, John Adams is a freak of nature. Lived to be 90 years old, and the average man lived to be about 38 or 40. He was an alcoholic. He drank beer, and then he drank whiskey from the time he was 8 years old. He started smoking cigars first and pipes when he was 8 years old. Had a terrible family environment. And we'll come back to some of that. He's a freak of nature. And I think Gerald Ford deserves a little, Jimmy Carter deserves a little extra commentary. In August of 2015, he announced that he had melanoma that had metastasized to his brain and his liver. And that is a definitive picture of melanoma. It's an irregular form and 2 colors. That's melanoma. That's a deadly skin cancer. He was at ease with whatever comes. He kind of got his act together. He was ready for whatever happened. He was treated at Emory Winship Institute with radiation and pembrolizumab, which is Keytruda, and 4 months later he said his cancer was in remission. That's a near miracle. Keytruda is the first of a so-called checkpoint inhibitor, approved about 10 months before he made his announcement. Alex Trebek appears to be the latest patient getting Keytruda. The demand for Keytruda has exploded. 2018 sales worth $7.2 billion. That's a blockbuster drug product. It's Merck's best-selling product. And this is the cusp of a major change in the drug industry. Back in the days when I sat around the table playing, what kinds of, I spent a lot of time in the drug industry. We sat around the boardroom and said, what kind of diseases should we target? Well, cardiology is pretty good because those people live you like diabetics, they're always good for taking medicines. And never invested a penny in cancer drugs because those people didn't live long enough to justify the investment. That was 80s and 90s, and now it's a whole different story. Now, the drug industry manufactures and sells about $1 trillion worth of prescription drugs a year. And cancer therapeutics are the leading segment in that market. It's over $140 billion worth of cancer therapeutics sold every year around the world. So that's a whole change in the environment. Another study, I'm going to do about 10 slides on general studies, I'm going to get into some specific case studies. The Medicare Statistical Branch did a survey of physicians and historians, basically focused on risk factors, overweight, smoking, high blood pressure, those kinds of things. And the highest score in that survey went to Rutherford Hayes, if you ever heard of that man. But he's the president whose wife was called Lemonade Lucy. They kept the White House free of alcohol, free of tobacco, free of nutrition. So they had a very healthy lifestyle for Rutherford Hayes. Maybe I should I'll try to. A few years ago, I was giving one of these classes, and someone said, "Can you name any characteristics common to all the presidents?" And I had to think about that for a little while, but I think there are about a dozen of them. The first one is command of the language. Every president, except the current, except for him, he's the exception there. But except for him, all the presidents had total command of the language. Even people like Grant, the Army officer, his memoirs are magnificent. So that's the kind of thing you deal with. The other thing is just plain luck. And I'm going to show you about 5 or 6 slides to kind of reinforce that point as we go through this. But he only had one case of poison ivy, it's the only disease he ever had. The only liability for Hayes was he was wounded in the Civil War 4 times. And the first one was at Stone Mountain in West Virginia and almost killed him because of ruptured artery. He was on the ground with his Ohio infantry, and he happened to come across his brother-in-law, who was a doctor. His name was John Webb. John Webb stopped the bleeding in his artery and saved his life. That's just a fluke of nature. He happened to be at the right place at the right time. I think I'll move on from there.
Bob, can you hang on a second to get that mic closer to your mouth? There we go.
It's probably moving around on this. I hope it stays there.
Okay.
Speaking of the devil, the unhealthiest president was, this listing is due to the Fitness magazine study done about 10 years ago. They don't like fat men, so Grover Cleveland and William Howard Taft are the top 2 unhealthiest presidents according to this survey. And get Kennedy, Eisenhower, on down the list. I have 2 exceptions to this listing. First of all, I don't see how an 93-year-old man can be a sick president. And second of all, it doesn't include Franklin Roosevelt, who is certainly one of the top 5 sickest presidents. So that's my only exception to that survey. And finally, you have a couple slides about psychiatric disorders in presidents. There's a group at Duke University, School of Psychiatry, led by Jonathan Davidson, who has studied the first 37 presidents, and he made a diagnosis of a psychiatric disorder in 18 of the 37. And that was published in a peer-reviewed journal in 2006. It got a lot of notoriety. And I'll comment on a couple. John Adams, I said, as a fluke of nature, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. It's the same thing as manic depression, if you will. John Adams had a very difficult family life. He spent 10 years overseas in the diplomatic service. He was separated from his beloved wife for most of those 10 years. His son was an alcoholic, he died when he was 30. Alcoholism goes through the whole Adams family. His daughter, beloved daughter, got into a very bad marriage. She had breast cancer, which was taken off with anesthesia when she was about 35 years old by Benjamin Rush. That's a terrible home environment. If Jefferson was running for office now, he would never make it. Social phobia. Jefferson couldn't talk. He could not give a speech. And he only tried 3 times, as far as we can tell. First one was his first inauguration. Second was the State of the Union address. Third was his second inauguration address. That's it. He could write, but he couldn't talk. He was at home with a dinner table with about 6 people. That was his environment. And his pen got him where he was in life. And frankly, I don't have a lot of respect for Jefferson. It doesn't show me too much, but that's another story. Grant was the most famous alcoholic in the United States history. And Coolidge had another terrible family incident. His younger son, Calvin Jr., was playing tennis at the White House without socks on, and he got an infected toe. This was in 1924, just after Coolidge became president. And the infected toe turned into a septic shock, and he died about 3 days later. He couldn't do anything about it. This is before antiseptics and antibiotics, all those kinds of things. So with that, the light went out of Coolidge's presidency, and he became depressed. You're looking at a member of the Coolidge Society. We spent a lot of time in Vermont, and we joined the Coolidge Society. And I got to know John Coolidge, who was Calvin Coolidge's older son. And he always kept saying, the death of Calvin Jr. took the life out of Calvin Coolidge Sr. John Coolidge was a very interesting guy. He was a rich man. The name Coolidge went a long way, president of a bank, married the daughter of the governor of Connecticut, owned a couple of factories. I kept trying to get him to tell stories about his relationships in Washington. And his favorite person in Washington was Alice Roosevelt, Alice Blue Gown. He would start to tell a story and say, I'm not telling you that. He would fit about halfway through it. One of these days, well, John died about 10 years ago, so that's a dead end, I suppose. On from there. Davidson combined with a man named Lord Owen in England, and they're trying to get hubris syndrome added to the DSM, which is the Bible of psychiatry. You have to have a definition in that Bible to get reimbursement for any of these treatments. The symptoms of hubris syndrome are as follows: power of self-glorification, obsessive focus on personal image, excessive self-confidence with contempt for the advice of others. I think you can tell where I'm going with this. Loss of contact with reality, speaking as a reckless and impulsive actions, and hubristic incompetence. The problem here is it's incurable. So we're stuck with this guy for who knows how long. The nominees for this award started with Woodrow Wilson, rightly so. John Kennedy will win this award, Lyndon Johnson will win this award, and Carrington will retire the trophy, I think. That's the state of the art. And it all sums up this section in a book called The Arrogance of Power. That's Richard Nixon, of course, read by Anthony Zummers. He summons 2 witnesses to summarize what I was trying to tell you. So, Elliot Richardson was Nixon's Attorney General. You could say that no totally healthy human being is likely to become president of the United States. That's a pretty serious indictment. Leonard Garment was Nixon's special counsel. There's a predilection in people who become president. That makes him very strange. And Richard Nixon just happened to be one of the strangest of a very strange crew. Absolutely right. I had a chance to tour Nixon's library before it opened. I had a couple of good friends in Orange County, one of whom was the Republican Party treasurer for Orange County. He took me on a tour of the library before it opened. You could go through the whole thing and not know there was such a thing as Watergate. Not one mention of the occurrence of Watergate in the Nixon library. The two daughters got together, battled with that, and the one daughter said, we had the expectation to put something in there about Watergate. So that's what happened. There are 3 exceptions to this. Howard Taft, Gerald Ford are, I think, true gentlemen. Everything I've ever read or anything I've ever heard people talking to these 2 guys, they're true gentlemen. And the last guy is Harry Truman the human, they call him. I think he was just a random down there. He was one of us. And I really admire Harry Truman. Okay. A couple of cardiac case histories and a couple of general case histories, and I'll nominate my sickest presidents. This is a series of blood pressure readings. It started in 1935. And a couple of significant dates: D-Day, Election Day, Inauguration Day. This measurement was made 3 hours before this man died in that building. So who are we talking about here? It's Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt was in Warm Springs on April 12, 1945. Put his hand to his head and said, I have a headache. And he was dead in an hour because he had truly life-threatening hypertension. The question here is, how was his hypertension treated? And the answer is it wasn't, because there were no antihypertensive drugs in this country in 1945. First one was Reserpine. Reserpine was approved in 1954. It comes in Indian snake root, shown here. It was the first drug that was approved for treatment of hypertension. Before that, what few cures were tried were surgical. People realized that arteries, when they are constricted, cause an increase in blood pressure. They would cut the nerves and innervate those arteries. That was the only treatment they had. Not a common thing. The medications he did have were digitalis relief for congestive heart failure and hypertensive heart disease, aminophylline, a bronchodilator, cocaine for sinuses, and phenobarbital for epilepsy. The last year and a half while he was in office, people around him would say just to go away for a while. Just look at him just sitting there and had no idea where he was and what was going on. They thought it was epilepsy. More likely with a TIA, which is a transient ischemic attack, which is a precursor to a stroke. But they gave him that drug for that reason. This is Bruin. This is a Navy cardiologist who lived with Roosevelt the last year and a half of his life. And Ross McIntyre was his traditional personal physician. He was no ENT specialist. He really couldn't deal with heart disease. 32, 36, 40. Last picture taken April 11, 1945. I mean, there's a true degeneration of the man. I feel sorry for him. Anyway, this is the history of antihypertensive pharmaceuticals. Excuse my bias, but I lived with this kind of stuff. First one, as I said, Wolfia serpentina, then the diuretic at 57, approved for hypertension 2 years later, beta blocker in 67, ACE inhibitors in 81, calcium channel blockers in 82. And that's pretty much the end of the story. We have a set of very safe, very effective, very inexpensive drugs which treat hypertension. I'm not aware of any drug company in the world doing research on hypertension. So that's a done deal. And it also has a good public health effect. The incidence of heart attacks and strokes has been reduced by half in that 30-year period. So that's a very good public health study, I think. The other disease, of course, we associate with Roosevelt is poliomyelitis. That's the last picture of Roosevelt. Excuse me, of Roosevelt. Walking unaided. Excuse me, Roosevelt was Undersecretary of the Navy in the First World War. At the end of the war, they accused him of misusing funds. So for a summer vacation, instead of going right to Cape Bell from Hyde Park, he had to go to Washington and testify before Congress about how to use the funds in the Navy Department. So on the way heading back to Cape Bell, he decided to stop at this Boy Scout Jamboree in New York State. And that's where he got his polio virus. It took about 12 days for the symptoms to show up. Seal breakage, where he decompression for months. He wound up in hospital, Presbyterian Hospital, for about 6 months. The definitive examination was made by Robert Lovett at Harvard. Arms and neck normal, bowel, bladder, sexual function normal. Unable to flex hips, no motion in hamstrings and variable toes. If you had a chance to see the movie Hyde Park and Hudson, it really gives an intimate view of how he dealt with his paralysis, if you will, but it depicts him as a sexual predator. And the fact is he was capable of climaxing, so that wasn't really too well known. The two polio vaccines were approved in 55 and 61. The Sabin polio vaccine, one thing on sugar cube, was the biggest trial ever done by a drug company. 2 million people in that country trial in Russia. Anyhow, if you really want to get a close-up view of how he dealt with his paralysis, that's a movie I would strongly recommend. Sunrise at Cape Bell. Ralph Bellamy does an eerily good imitation of FDR, and it's kind of with the approval of Eleanor, who was there for most of the filming. It starts in 21 when he was age 39. It goes through the Democratic National Convention when he nominated Al Smith for president. The other thing which is kind of curious is this mark over his left eye. There in 36, there in 39, and gone in 44. Some people, especially this neurologist named Stephen Lumazov, said that's metastatic cancer. And if it invaded his brain, which is likely, it would have helped to cause his stroke. So that's a controversial theory. As evidence, they put it into something called hemianopia. That's Franklin Roosevelt 3 weeks back from Yalta, sitting down and giving his report to Congress on what happened at Yalta, where Stalin took his lunch, and the Boxing came in. But it was an hallucinant bonder, and he couldn't read the left page. You can only read the right page. When they come back to the White House, they learn you can only read the right page. That means his left eye was blind, and his right eye was able to read this thing. They call it hemianopia, and they say that's evidence for that being metastasis.
What, are they supposed to have removed it? Or did it just disappear magically?
I was in Hyde Park a couple months ago, and I asked the docents, how true is this? And they said, unfortunately, all of FDR's medical records have been destroyed. The doctor I showed you before, Ross McIntyre, he had one of two keys to FDR's medical records in Bethesda. Chances are he destroyed those records. He either lost his reputation, he had none, if he had allowed access to those records. That's probably what McIntyre took it off. And we can't follow up on this, what happened to those metastatic cancer marks. That's history. Some places you run to a dead end, I'm afraid that's what happened there. Finally, I talked about luck, I talked about Rutherford Hayes' luck. Here's a kind of a strange footnote. In January '43, FDR traveled to Casablanca for a 10-day meeting with Churchill, first city president to fly. Despite severe security concerns about many Axis agents in Casablanca, Germans had broken U.S. communication codes and knew about the Casablanca meeting, but the Germans translated Casablanca literally as White House. So then we got into that and said, well, we're not going to be the White House together with Roosevelt, so he called off the assassination plans. So that's Casablanca is White House. So that's where translations worked in our favor. Finally, Eisenhower, General Medical, he had everything. He had 35 assignments around the world. He caught everything he catch: dysentery, shingles, arthritis, Crohn's. But the point here is, the tipping point in Eisenhower's medical career and his life was in November 1912 when he blew out a knee in a football game against Tufts. He was a good athlete, almost an All-American halfback. So that really set him back. He said, I'm here to play football. I don't care about the rest of the stuff. So he wanted to stay on, he couldn't, his career was over. So he wanted to leave the academy, and the football coach talked him into, why don't you stick around and coach the junior varsity? Which is what he did. And that's when his true talent came through. His true talent was the ability to get a bunch of different people, aggressive, very strong individuals, get together and bridge a team. That predicted what was going to happen with de Gaulle and Churchill and Patton and all those guys in the Second World War. That's what made Eisenhower's career. By the way, he's the only president ever struck with lightning. I like Phillips. He died at the age of 78 because this is really his problem, heart disease, in several forms. In March, he died at Walter Reed at age 78 after having been resuscitated at least 14 times. Paddles, zap, bang, and all that stuff. And those are for two morbidities. When people say heart attack, they really are talking about two different things. The first thing, you're talking about a true ischemic blockage, where an artery is blocked, blood can't get through and deliver oxygen. That's an ischemic heart attack. And that's a plumbing problem. The other one is an electrician problem, because you have things like ventricular fibrillation. That's purely an irregular heartbeat. It has nothing to do with blockage of arteries. Both those two things can cause very rapid decline and death, of course. So between those two things, you have 14 of those episodes. Starting with his first heart attack in Denver, it took him 24 hours to diagnosis. Most of the presidents around this area were kind of reluctant to have their health status disclosed, but he did just the opposite. He said to the press secretary, tell everyone. So that kind of made him a rallying point for treatment of heart attacks, because in those days, literally, put the patient in bed for 6 months and said your prayer. But after this is a whole new era starting after his heart attacks. By the way, his third one came with Freeman Gosling. He loved playing with colorful Amos of Amos and Andy, because he said Amos made me laugh. But these are the years where true developments led to a new era in cardiac care, as illustrated by this list. Drugs, defibrillators, pacemakers, that's the first pacemaker, wearable. Framingham study report, after 12 years of research, established what a risk factor was. Hypertension, overweight, cigarette smoking, alcohol, even earlobe creases are risk factors for hypertension. For cardiac care unit, the first cardiac care unit was in the city in the world that had the highest incidence of heart disease, Glasgow, Scotland. Surgeon General, cardiac bypass, I think it was Cleveland Clinic, transplant, South Africa, angioplasty, and on down the list. These all have stories associated with them, but I don't know that I guess anymore today. I'm probably going to run out of time before too long. But the race is on. Cancer continues to increase the number of deaths in this country. Heart disease deaths peaked about 1970, gradual decline, and now it's slowly back up again. So the incidence of the number of deaths due to heart disease is increasing for the first time in a couple of years. And it's due to risk factors, diabetes, overweight, all kinds of other risk factors are contributing to that curve. And as a result, you're having declining health life expectancies in all the major countries except for Japan. Japan has the longest life expectancy in the world. The average Japanese woman lives to be about 89 years old. The press releases the last day or two are trying to contradict this. They have some preliminary data about which direction this curve is really going in, but it's never a complete story, I think, is the lesson here. Somebody once said it's John Connolly, governor of Texas. If there's one editor which described Lyndon Johnson, Connolly's answer was, I think every adjective in the dictionary described Lyndon Johnson. Type A personality, he was always conscious of his lineage. His father died at age 60. He had a heart attack in the Senate. When he was 46 years old until like 55, as bad as can be, he still lived. He's a smoker, a little exercise, weighed 220. But he got religion, he reduced, but then when he left the White House, due to health concerns and a little place called Vietnam, he just kind of let it go. And Angela every day drug regimen was digitalis, nitroglycerin, fatal third heart attack at age 64. And that's a type A personality if there ever was one. He started and worked about 20 hours a day for the rest of the day off. And this is I think, kind of neat story. It's also luck. In June of 42, Lyndon Johnson's career was due to 3 R's: Roosevelt, Russell, and Rayburn, who was the Speaker of the House, also in Texas. So he convinced Rayburn to give him an assignment and that would get him a sort of combat medal, if you will. So Johnson, Amanda Anderson, and Amanda Stevens were sent to Australia to join the mission of 12 Martin B-26 Marauder bombers who were going to New Guinea. Lyndon, they all named these airplanes, so Lyndon boarded a plane called the Wabash Cannonball. He left briefly to urinate, and Stevens took Lyndon Johnson's place. And Lyndon boarded another B-26. The Japanese Zeros attacked these B-26 for 13 minutes. 11 of the 12 B-26 returned to Garmin. Only the Wabash Cannonball was launched and saved with all hands. So, good thing he had a pick. That's it. Literally. He was awarded the Silver Star by MacArthur, who knew a project when he sold one. Good way to lose weight, lost 25 pounds in a month. That scares the crap out of you, understandably. Bill Clinton, Obama, and Trump all were within a few weeks of each other in 1946. Heart disease risk when he took office, emergency quadruple bypass. This is the point here. The drug regimen for after CABG procedure is aspirin, a pill thinner, simvastatin to control cholesterol, beta blocker to prevent irregular heartbeats, ACE inhibitor to control blood pressure, and Plavix to prevent clotting. 2 stents, became part-time vegan. He did lose a lot of weight. That's Chelsea's wedding. So lost a lot of weight. There are some current rumors about him having Parkinson's disease. Some of the tabloids in the supermarket said he only has a few months to live. We'll see. And the final cardiovascular slide is this one. There are 4 other patients who died of heart disease. They're listed here. That's cool. That's John Coolidge's tombstone. That has to be the simplest tombstone of any person I've ever seen. Just his name and dates. And the other thing to appreciate about this is that heart attack is a rather new disease. The first time a heart attack was described in the literature was in 1912 by a man named James Harris, who said this is what a heart attack is and this is what causes it. So that disease is only 100 years old. So anything before that is contributed to heart disease is really kind of problematic. Most people will say that they died of apoplexy. Apoplexy comes from the Greek term which means to fall down suddenly as in a battle. So any sudden death, apoplexy, it could have been this or anything else. Move on to a few other case histories as time allows. George Washington was as the medical history of a hypochondriac. Some people ask me if it's hard to study the earlier presidents. In fact, the opposite is true. Because most of these guys were very good at keeping journals, records, and they wrote a lot of them. Thomas Jefferson wrote 21,000 letters, and 18,000 of them still exist. So there's a lot of data on Jefferson, and Washington comes to that. Jefferson kept a record of everything he planted, everything he did, all the letters he wrote and received. Anyway, so in 1751, George goes to Barbados with his brother, who was Lawrence, who has tuberculosis, as it turns out, a terrible case of tuberculosis. And he thought a change in weather would be helpful to Lawrence, so they go to Barbados. The only time George is out of this country for about 3 months in 1751-52. For his trouble, he catches a case of smallpox, also catches tuberculosis, and on down the list here. This is probably the standard portrait of George Washington done by Gilbert Stuart in 1796 in the White House. That's false. We don't really know what George Washington looked like. That's not for a challenge. His mouth is stuffed with cotton. He had no teeth left. He also had jaw disease, so he had a very reduced mouth. Those are cotton balls. There are no pock marks from smallpox. One thing smallpox will do is leave pock marks on your face, and the artist has simply ignored them. And finally, tuberculosis will cause a kind of curvature in the chest. That's not seen here, but that's just fiction. And we think that's what George probably looked like. Who really knows? Anyhow, again, George is really one of the lucky presidents. French Indian War ambush in Monongahela under General Braddock. George went on 4 assignments to try to get the French to leave Fort Duquesne. Failed each time. He wasn't a very good tactician. But anyway, on the way to Fort Duquesne, the Indians and the French ambushed that army. The 82 British officers under Braddock, only one was not wounded or killed. And guess who that was? It's almost divine intervention, you have to say. French Indian War, they call it World War II because of lots of going on here. Finally, in 1758, John Forbes got a campaign together. They did capture Fort Duquesne. And George, that was the most frightening time he ever had in his life, because he was caught in a crossfire among his own troops. And he used a sword to knock the weapons out of the troops' hands. He said that was the worst he ever had on the battlefield. This is George's last day. Symptoms were severe sore throat, shortness of breath, onions boiled in molasses, Martha's favorite remedy. Butter dissolved in vinegar, flannel impregnated with menthol and wrapped around his throat. This is the problem. It was infected and swollen. Blister of cantharitis, Spanish fly, it was the brag of the day. And a cluster, that's a cluster, of calomel would cause copious discharges in both hands. His bled 4 times, took 80 ounces, nearly half his total circulation. That's state of the art of medicine in 1799. He got sick, and the doctors killed him. Pretty much what it comes into. This is fun. George is the tallest president. Any doubt? Lincoln was 6'4", George was about 6'5". A couple of literature references in this biography, which is a brick of a book by Randall, but especially I met a man named Dean Melissa at the Warren Tire this summer. Dean Melissa is the White House, is the Mount Vernon official, designated interpreter for George Washington. Looks the role, is about 6'3", right build, knows all the stories about George Washington. So I confronted him, how tall was George Washington? And he says the range is between 6'2" and 6'6". Any of those could have, the consensus is 6'4.5", which makes him taller than Jefferson. This is Jefferson, who is 6'3", and George has a couple of inches on him, so George is probably about 6'5". So I think tallest president. Another bit of trivia. Jefferson's main problems were headaches. If you get a chance to see a movie called Give 'Em Hell, Harry, it's the James Whitmore interpretation of Harry Truman. Harry Truman is a serious student of history. And the statement he makes, quote unquote, the man who suffered the most as any president in office was Thomas Jefferson, because he was prone to these cluster or migraine headaches, whatever they were called. Usually That occurred after a period of stress about death. His mother died. He was in bed for 5 weeks. He couldn't get out of bed for 5 weeks. Got out just in time to go to Philadelphia, went to the Declaration. Arrived in France in '85, 6 weeks, same thing, and on down the list. His treatment was Peruvian bark, which comes from the conchola tree in Peru. It's a source of quinine, and it does treat these things, does treat a fever of any kind. He had access to marijuana. He often talks about smoking marijuana in his back porch. And he also had access to the poppy, which yields opium in a lot of them. He probably used it. And then he's a type A personality, intermittent anxiety, depression, and insomnia. Jefferson was an anxious, striving perfectionist, a compulsively controlling man. He had outsized talents for statesmanship and outsized talents for self-indulgence. I'm not a fan of Jefferson, but I'll leave it at that. J.D. Rowe is the same thing. He had Washington crossing the Delaware to get to the Battle of Trenton. They were late by 2 hours. Get held by icebergs and things like that. They saved Monroe's life. Monroe was in the same boat with Washington. And because they were 2 hours late, he took a bullet in the shoulder. He would have bled to death. He said the doctor was not going to be there 2 hours earlier. Once there, when he got hit by the bullet, then he was saved Monroe's life. He went back to the Army and had another career. All right. Andrew Jackson, indestructible Andrew Jackson. The first serious duel was with Charles Dickinson. The bullet, Dickinson shot Jackson. The bullet lodged in his left lung and was never removed. He rode 40 miles back to Nashville and invalid for a month, never recovered completely. That bullet was never removed. And between the bullet and lead acetate medicine, he probably had lead poisoning systemically. And in 1813, he got involved with a bar fight in the Bentons, and that bullet was removed. Caesar Williams in the White House. This is, man is indestructible. Skeletal frame 6 feet, 129. Constant pain for war wounds and invalid bullets. Rack-like consumption, tuberculosis, difficult breathing, active cough, frequent headaches, blindness in the right eye. Needed a cane to walk, rarely left the White House. Died in 1845 at age 78. That, as far as I can tell, that's the oldest photograph we have of the president. That was taken in May of 1845 when he had 2 weeks to live. And I think that's the earliest photograph I can find. The alternative is John Quincy Adams, who was photographed, but that was in 1848. So I think that's the oldest picture of the president. The first assassination attempt was by Richard Lawrence, who attacked Jackson in the Capitol building. He thought he was depriving him of some payments from the government. Lawrence had 2 guns. The first one misfired, and the second did the same thing. So he had 2 blank shots at Andrew Jackson in the Capitol building. And he was found not guilty of insanity. He was defended by Francis Scott Key. But I think you can say George Washington had a role in saving Andrew Jackson's life. Washington died in 1799. We're talking about 1835 here, so how do you figure? Congress was determined to bury George Washington in the Capitol building, like Napoleon in France. They had actually excavated the place for the mausoleum in the Capitol building. Building's about a foot above sea level. Water vapor all over the place. Water vapor got into those 2 guns and prevented the fire. So Washington saved Jacksonville. How's that for a soldier? Anyhow, strongest president. The axe game. Try this one sometime. Standard procedure whenever you visit a military post. You would get 2 axes. Hold them by the handle between the thumb and forefinger, stretched out, and stood there. And he challenged anybody to do it as long as he could. And he never lost that challenge. That's how strong he was. He made a living as a kid, chopping wood and building fences. And he probably the strongest president ever. He's the only one that belongs to the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, by the way. Malaria all over the place. Melancholia, whole book about his melancholy. He may have caught syphilis. He told his law partner Herndon that he caught syphilis in 1835 or 36, and worried that he may have infected Mary with the disease. So it explains how Mary's behavior. And again, there, Marfan syndrome. This is the element. A lot of speculation. It's a disease of the connective tissue. It can lead to an aneurysm. That's a liability here. Eyeglasses, smallpox, migraines, and what if? A couple of weeks before the surrender was signed, Lincoln was in Virginia, where the assembly point was taking place. And they wanted to have a parade. Grant was there, Lincoln was there, and a man named General Ward was there. And Mary Lincoln was supposed to show up for the parade. She was late. So Abraham said, let's let these guys, you know, they stand in the sun all day, let's let them parade and we can all go home. So Mary Lincoln arrives just in time to see Mary Ward on a horse next to Abraham Lincoln. And Mary loses him. Physically attacks Mary Ward. And what comes of that is Mary Ward says, don't ever get me to stay in the room with the Lincolns, Mary Lincoln. So General Grant was supposed to attend the theater with Lincoln that night and declined. And Mary and Lincoln, Grant's flight refused to go to the theater because of the experience with Mary Ward. If Grant had gone to the theater that night, his bodyguard would have been with him, all 20 of them. And what's the name of the looks we got nowhere near the box where Lincoln was sitting for the one. So that's a big wave. Teddy Roosevelt. If you ever get a chance to visit his birthplace, it's on 20th Street in New York City, Brownstone. It's a really great depiction of his youth. And the thing they really emphasize is the fact that he had asthma. And they tried everything. Naively, there were such things as asthma cigarettes. Asthma was a disease of the lungs. They figured, you know, put something in there and see what happens. So that's what they went out of favor when they passed the Food and Drug Law in 1960. That's what they tried. Also had myopia, chickenpox, protruding teeth. Entered Harvard in 1876, was 5'8", 124. Left the presidency, he was 5'8", 230. He overdid everything, including eating, exercising, running, everything he overdid. Sent him on the Hill of Medal of Honor. Only president ever got a Medal of Honor. Medical history, it's more detailed than I could probably justify reading everything. Malaria, carriage accident in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. He's in a carriage. When a trolley hits the carriage and knocks him 40 feet, he lands on a mud pile. And that leg injury never healed. Boxing injury to his eye. Survived the assassination attempt in Milwaukee. John Schrank had a point-blank shot at him. Hit him in the chest where he had his speech and spectacles folded up. And had to fight with the bullet. They also learned from his experience with McKinley and Garfield not to have doctors mess around with the bullet wound. So he kept that bullet in his chest. There was mastoiditis, severe recurrence of jungle fever, hospitalized for treatment of arthritis, 4 episodes of falling bones. And he had 2 terrible family experiences. In February 1884, he's called back from his job in Albany to visit his home where his mother is sick. His mother died that day, and so did his wife. 2 deaths in the same building on the same day. That's enough to make him run away. He did. He ran away to North Dakota and got to be a cowboy. And the other thing he really sent him back was he had 5 sons by his second wife. And Quentin was the youngest, and he was killed in the air camp over France. And that really took the wind out of Roosevelt's sails. He died of a heart attack at age 60. Supposedly. This is the big loser. KF got to be in Sandy is about 330, 340. He became a poster boy for weight loss, 3 small meals a day, like this, continuously hungry. His plan in life was to be a professor of law, or even a justice on the Supreme Court. But his wife kind of put him into being the president first. After he left the presidency, he had a good time teaching law at Yale. His weight dropped to 240 on a diet of toast and apples. I love this fact. As Chief Justice, he wrote 200 opinions. And most Supreme Court opinions are 5-4, maybe 6-3. 84% of his opinions were unanimous. That's remarkable. He had to be either a very good lawyer or a very good manager, and he was probably both. That's a remarkable man. Woodrow Wilson, son of the dominating father, this man is one complex character. Freshman at Davidson, a health fell apart, and he went back home until he entered Princeton. Lifetime headaches, lifetime digestive disorders shown here. He ate charcoal to remove his toxins from his stomach. 14 episodes of nervousness, dyspepsia, headaches, so severe as to interfere seriously with his work. Episodes accounted for 8 years of the 50 years of his adult life. And this is a case that would have been a very good case of disclosure before he ran for president, because he had a serious character flaw which was evident when he was president of Princeton, beginning at about 1890, running through 1910. He was stubborn. There were two big issues. He was strongly opposed to the eating clubs at Princeton. He wanted everybody to be the same. One class of students, but the alumni refused to go along with that, and the alumni blocked his attempts to have the eating clubs banned from Princeton. Second thing was a man named Gamble, Procter Gamble, wanted to fund the graduate school at Princeton. The issue became, where does the graduate school go? Gamble wanted to go where the golf course was, where he was also a very good golfer, and funded the graduate school. Wilson wanted the graduate school to be in the middle of the campus. And obviously he lost that battle because they didn't have the money to offset tables. And that got him into trouble with the Board of Trustees. They fired him because he became irascible. He could not negotiate. And when it came time to settle the First World War and the Treaty of Versailles, he makes the mistake of going to Versailles by himself, not taking Secretary of State and any of those people with him. So he had the misguided thought that he could do the treaty by himself. And that blew up. He came back and the Senate rebelled against the Treaty of Versailles, refused to approve it. And that was part of his nervous breakdown. He went on a speaking tour he always thought he could go over the politicians and approach the people directly. He was a good speaker and very smart. But he ran out of gas on a speaking tour, nervous breakdown in September 1919, a stroke, got back to the White House, and a serious stroke which paralyzed him for the rest of his life. So he spent the last 16 months of his presidency in the White House as a criminal. And essentially the country was won by his wife and his doctor. Fatal stroke. If you get a chance, his retirement home on West Street in Colorado section of Washington, it's a beautiful tour. It's a magnificent home, part of the National Trust, and it really gives you a sense of what most of them was all about. Kennedy, overall physical wreck, hospitalized at least 30 times, last went to the Catholic Church at least 3 times, scarlet fever. Joe Kennedy promised to give half his worldly wealth to the church that JFK's life was spared. And like everything else, he reneged. Donated $3,700 to a guild for a bus to transport disadvantaged children to hospitals. I mean, this is serious stuff. This is the year of influenza pandemic, so he has to worry about infections. But this really shows you the character of Joseph Kennedy. This is a terrible slide. I violated every rule there is to make a slide. This is his educational decade, 30 to 40. Essentially, he had everything. They were really looking for leukemia. They had trouble having him gain weight and keep the weight on. He always had stomach problems. His roommates strongly suspected he had a sexually transmitted disease, and he had chlamydia at Harvard. If you read the biographies of Kennedy, the good stuff comes from quotations from a man named Lem Billings. He was his roommate starting at Choate and all through Harvard. Billings has the stories about Kennedy, which really illuminate his darker side of the world. But this explains a lot. They explain that the difficulties that Jackie had with pregnancies too. This is what I was talking about before. This is the back race. And I think I've already told that story, so I can move on. Finally, these are his medications that indicate the kinds of things he was being treated for. Demerol, methadone, analgesic, cocaine, Ritalin, barbiturates, methylphenidate. He was anxious, diarrheals, lomotil, opioid, transitine. Finally, the sickest president. These are my offerings for the 5 sickest presidents, and the reason I put them on this slide. John Kennedy is first. In pain for most of his life, certainly during the presidency. RFK said at least half his days he spent on this earth with days of intense physical pain. Seymour Hersh, biographer, JFK lied about his health throughout his political career. Michael O'Brien, JFK suffered from chlamydia throughout most of his adult life. So it's hard to respect a man that can't keep his pants on. That's where I come from. Franklin Roosevelt was crippled and handicapped. FDR's MDs knew that he had cardiological problems, poliomyelitis, pulmonary weakness, high blood pressure, anemia, bleeding hemorrhoids, sinusitis, and other lesser difficulties. Theodore Roosevelt many risky behaviors. Stockton said he spent virtually his entire life in a staring contest with death. Andrew Jackson is a violent man with many battle scars. toothless, wrinkled, plagued by years of physical punishment, suspected lead out of a mercury poisoning, the man made for a storm, still lived to age 78. And as of the duel with Dickinson, he was well doomed to a semi-endolism for 39 more years. And Woodrow Wilson, debilitating character flaws and strokes. Don Moses, between the summer of 1875 when he was 18 and the beginning of his final illness in 1919, he had 14 separate illnesses, each lasting from 2 months to a year. And there's my big finish. These are the big mausoleums. So that's Grant, that's McKinley, and that's Garfield, that's McKinley. That's final. That's my big finish. Are there any questions? We can declare that end unless you have any questions or comments. That's the brace. It goes from his neck to his groin. So it essentially keeps him in place. So after the first shot hit his neck, he couldn't fall over, which he should have. So he just stays ramrod straight, and Boswell second goal, we know what that did.
The question is, we've got presidential candidates and a president, everybody's in their 70s. In your opinion, are there controls or safeguards in terms of that this wouldn't happen again, where we get presidents that were very ill?
I thought about that. It makes a lot of sense, but the question is, how do you implement that? Who do you assign to make the judgment this man is not capable of obeying the president? In addition to which, a lot of these limitations didn't really affect their performance. And they were able to, Roosevelt was able to do everything, although he couldn't move. Okay. Sorry.
You spoke about character flaws with Woodrow Wilson. Even considering that time, wasn't he considered a racist, or some of his ideas at Princeton were?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the first things he did when he was elected president, he got rid of all African Americans in the federal government. Nothing so. He's a Southern, through and through. That's one of the many black marks against Woodrow Wilson. Yeah, every black American was dismissed from the federal government employment. How do we do? 55 minutes. I'll try to do it 55 minutes. I think I made it. All right.
That one movie on FDR that you referenced, was that whole Bill Murray?
Mark, that's yes. That was a remarkable performance by Bill Murray. It really captures the mood of the president. And the other part of that is it's told from the point of view of Daisy Sucklin, who was his cousin. And she spent more time with FDR than Eleanor did. And Daisy lived in Williston, and that house is still there. You can visit her house in Williston. But people always ask Daisy, did you take notes of all the time he's been with the president? And she always said no, but the fact that she did. She had a closet full of notes, so a book had been written of all the notes she took, and it was very insightful about FDR. I still have a lot of very mixed feelings about FDR. Some days good, some days bad. All of them, but I think that's the man. He was a very successful aristocrat. The question I keep asking myself is, did FDR know how sick he was? I've come down on both sides of it, because I don't think you can keep a secret from FDR. He knew everybody. If he wanted to learn something, he would get it. On the other hand, I think he kind of, the last year and a half of his life, he kind of said, well, I'm running out of gas, I'm going to see the thing through the end. And he played it as long as he could. And he went to Yalta with Stalin and Churchill. And Stalin essentially ate his lunch, and the box he came in. And that's what happened to the delineation of Europe after the Second World War.
Someone said about FDR, second class intellect, first class temperament.
Yes, I'm trying to think. I remember that quote. I'm trying to think of who made that. Actually, the same thing was applied to George Washington, and that was quoted by Thomas Jefferson. They didn't get along. I mean, they were pretty much neighbors, but Jefferson was a strange bird. I'll stop there. Jefferson's career peaked in 1776 and went down from there. Went down from as governor, he did nothing. As ambassador to France, he toured the wineries in France and Germany. Comes back to State Department, does nothing, gets mad and quits. As vice president, disappears. When it's president, he got credit for the Louisiana Purchase, but that was James Monroe and Robert Livingston. They were assigned to purchase New Orleans. And Napoleon offered them the whole Louisiana territory, on the spot they took it, without Jefferson even knowing
The
about it.
French needed the money back then.
Yeah, that's the point, yeah. 50 cents an acre.
Our current president, does he have health issues? Besides mental?
Yeah, the strange physics and
Mental
defensive, the advanced physical for something like that.
Yeah.
He's certainly a candidate for risk factor, overweight, terrible diet. I mean, all this stuff has to have an effect on the man. I mean, you can't go throw all the shots stuff in that. Something give you pause about what you have to do next. I guess the impeachment is over, essentially. But my son travels for Toyota. He goes to every state in the country. And he said the feelings for Trump are surprisingly strong. No matter down everywhere. He has some just immutable fans who are going to vote for him no matter what he does. And that gives me pause because I have trouble with his character, if you will. But, my son says, no, he's probably a lock for another 4 years. If the economy stays strong, he's going to win again. And that's why I'm more opinion. Are we adjourned? Thank you for that. Okay. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it.